Well, hello, folks out there in YouTube land. Got an interesting show for you. All right, we're going to talk about the 4 players that have been suspended. We're also going to talk about preparing for UTSA. And we're also going to talk about, will Nico see the field any in that game? And we'll get into all 3 of those categories. All right, so let's get into these 4 players that have been suspended. And this obviously had to do with the end of the game. And I know we all saw that ending. And basically what you had there was sort of a crazy ending where there was some bitter feelings, and we had a couple of timeouts, and then at the end, the quarterback, of course, he was kind of dancing around back there trying to run out the clock instead of just putting his knee down, and I don't think Tennessee appreciated that very much, so it got a little bit ugly there at the end. So the Southeastern Conference has suspended 3 of the football players and 1 Tennessee player for the first half of their upcoming games. I figured there would be some suspensions in this. I'm kind of glad they only went half a game instead of a full game, because that's the type of stuff, look, that happens at the end of a game if things get a little bit frosty, especially between Florida and Tennessee. The Florida players was offensive lineman Damian George, Micah Mazuka, and tight end Dante Sanders. They'll be suspended for the first half of the Charlotte game. And then Tennessee defensive lineman Omar Norman Lott will miss the first half of the UTS game. And they did a video review and consultation between the SEC, Florida, and Tennessee. And it talks about Graham Mertz scrambled and took a knee, but he danced around back there that's what got Tennessee irritated. And then it turned into a little bit of a melee back there. Both benches cleared, etc. And George was flagged for unsportsmanlike conduct. And Heupel defended his decision to call timeout. He said, "We're trying to get the ball back. We're trying to take a shot at the end zone. I don't know if you're going to have enough time for an onside or maybe get a shot back." He said, "You're trying to finish and compete the right way." That's really what he was trying to do. And he said, "Mertz is dancing around. Do you want the targeting?" Obviously no, but the guy's dancing around, so you have to go tackle the guy. He said, "Do we want to be composed in that situation?" He said, "Absolutely." So anyway, got messy towards the end. Sometimes that happens. I don't think that'll affect Florida. They're playing Charlotte, and we're playing UTSA. It'll affect us a little bit. But UTSA, they do run the ball. They've got a couple of nice running backs, and we're going to talk about them here in a minute. And UTSA's starting quarterback, Frank Harris, is actually a day-to-day decision. He's got turf toe. And the head coach of UTSA told Pete Thamel on Monday night that putting him in doubt for Saturday's game against the number 20 Vols, says, that turf toe is tough, man. It is a real pain. I've seen a lot of players go through that, and they really struggle getting back on the field. It's difficult to get it to heal. Harris was very good last year. He threw for 32 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, and he's a real leader on the field. So if he doesn't play, that makes it tough for UTSA. Now, they've got an adequate backup quarterback in Marburger, and he played pretty well against Army, if you saw his numbers, and I actually watched that game. Marburger he's pretty accurate. He threw for about 70%. He did throw 3 touchdowns, by the way, and 0 interceptions, so he's a quality backup player. He does have the ability to run. He's not a true dual-threat quarterback. He prefers to throw the ball, but he does have the ability to run if given the opportunity. And that's sort of the way Harris was too. Now, Army wound up winning that game because they ran all over him and controlled the ball. And Army came at him with a running quarterback, because that's pretty much what Army does. They used to do the triple option. It's almost like that in a way, because the quarterback is really a running back who throws. And if you look at the numbers, Army had 23 first downs. The UTSA only had 14. But you look at their rushing yards, Army had 254 rushing yards. So you can run on this team. However, again, that was with a running quarterback. And, normally we're not as active in that situation. And I don't see Joe doing a ton of running in this game. So I don't know if we'll be as effective as Army was. I mean, they are really a running team. But if you'll look at UTSA, they ran for 121 yards. They've got a couple of good running backs. They had the number 1 JUCO in the country is one of their running backs. And you can see they had 5.5 yards per run. So they are an adequate running team. But look at the time of possession, 15 minutes versus 45. Army just ran the ball and ran the ball and ran the ball. And UTSA really couldn't stop them. And Army's a very disciplined team. I don't even know if they had any penalties in that game. So this will be very interesting. It sounds like Frank Harris will not be playing in this game, and they'll be going with Marburger. And again, he's a quality quarterback. He's definitely not a hack, and he can handle himself just fine. And he did in that game. He didn't get to play very much because they only had the ball for 15 minutes, but when he had it, he was highly effective. So I think this is probably not good for UTSA, not having Frank Harris, their fearless leader, but they're okay. They're okay at quarterback for sure. And then lastly, we want to talk about, will Nico see the field? Now, I do not think that Joe played poorly enough to get benched at all. He did some good things in the game. His big struggles appear to me to be, operating the offense efficiently, having to call those timeouts and not keeping track of the play clock was a bit of a concern, especially in the third quarter, wasting 2 timeouts, which they had to do. And being able to throw the ball on the run when he's scrambling, he seems to struggle with that. He made some quality passes. He hit for 2 touchdowns. He did have the 1 interception, but it's not like he played just bad or anything. He just didn't play well enough is what it boils down to, because we only scored 16 points. So my thinking on this, and you may disagree with it, I would want to see what our backup quarterback can do. He's not had any live reps to speak of except for in the fourth quarter of the Virginia game. He got none in the Austin Peay game and none in the Florida game, and that's not good. Your backup quarterback needs to have some live reps. And especially given the fact he's the #1 player in the country, I would like to see what he can do in some actual real live reps. I'd like to see them go 2 series with Joe and then 1 series with Nico, kind of the way Utah did with their freshman quarterback, he was actually a running quarterback. Nico is not necessarily that. He's more of an accurate passer type guy, but he can scramble. But I would want to see him in some true live reps where the game is in question, and kind of see how he does. And then, depending on how he does, put Joe back in, a couple of series, put Nico back in. I'd like to see them do that very similar to the way Utah handled their quarterbacks, and kind of see what Nico can do, because he needs to develop. And it's going to be tough for him to do that without any live reps. And look, your backup needs to be prepared. Look what happened with Frank Harris. He got turf toe, and all of a sudden, Marburger's in there. So hopefully we'll get to see some Nico in this UTSA game, because the game after that, South Carolina, and we may not, I don't know how that's going to go. I can tell you Spencer Rattler is balling out. He looks fantastic. I've watched a couple of his games this year and how he finished up last year, and he's very confident, and he's making some great throws. And I tell you, South Carolina is going to be difficult, much more difficult than I was expecting, especially when we're having struggle scoring, which just shocks me that a Josh Heupel offense is struggling to score. That just blows my mind after averaging 41 and 46, and in the last 2 games, 30 and 16, and the 30 was against Austin Peay. So anyway, we need to get that figured out, and hopefully being in the friendly confines of Neyland Stadium will help a lot with the offense, because, look, I knew we were going to get 3 or 4 false starts due to the crowd noise, and it's hard to operate in an environment like that. It just is. You remember how it was with Georgia last year. When it gets loud like that, it's tough. So we'll see how it plays out. But hopefully we'll get to see Nico some in this game and get some of these other quarterbacks a little bit of playing time, live rep playing time, that is. And if you like this content, be sure to hit that like button. Lets me know to continue to cover the Vols and all our upcoming opponents and all that good stuff. If you've not subscribed, it's on your right, my left. Just hit that little button. I would appreciate it. And right over here is the most recent video that YouTube thinks you'll love. And we'll see you next time on Sports Talk Jay.